He lost 8 elections and watched his business collapse before turning 30. He buried 3 of his own sons while leading a bleeding nation. He battled a darkness so deep that friends had to hide his knives. Yet this broken man became the only soul who could save America. Welcome back, I'm Alex Grant. We see him on the $5 bill as a statue of stone, unbreakable and cold. But the real Lincoln wasn't a god. He was a man living on the edge. He was a man fighting a bloody civil war on the battlefield, while fighting an even harder war inside his own mind. Today, we didn't meet the legend. We meet the human. Ladies and gentlemen, the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln. Yes. Mr. President, thank you for being here. Let's start with a hard truth. History books call you a genius. They call you a natural-born leader. But when you look back at your life, do you see a genius? Or do you see something else?
A genius? No, Alex. I saw a man who was stumbling in the dark. For most of my life, I felt like a piece of driftwood floating down a river, hitting every rock along the way.
That's putting it lightly. I looked at your record. You failed in business. Twice. You went bankrupt. You lost the race for the state legislature. You lost the race for Congress. You lost the race for Senate. Twice. Most people would have quit after the first bankruptcy. Why didn't you? What kept you going when the world told you no?
I didn't keep going because I was brave. I kept going because I had nowhere else to go. I had no money. I had no family name. I had no education. Politics was the only ladder I had. If I let go, I would fall into the mud forever.
It wasn't just career failure, though. It was a mental battle. People today talk about mental health like it's a new concept, but you suffered from what they called melancholy. It was severe.
Melancholy. Yes, it is a deep black pit. There were days in Illinois when I did not dare carry a pocket knife in my pocket.
A knife? Why?
Because I was afraid of what I might do to myself if I was left alone with it. The pain in my mind was sharper than any blade. I told my law partner once, I am the most miserable man living. Whether I shall ever be better, I cannot tell.
That is terrifying to hear from a future president. But here is the paradox. If you were that fragile, how did you survive the Civil War? How did a man who couldn't handle a knife handle the destruction of a country?
Voice. That is the secret, Alex. The fire. It hardens the clay. If I had won those early elections, if I had been happy and comfortable, I would have been soft. I would have broken when the war started. But because I had lived in hell within my own mind for years, the hell of the Civil War did not scare me. My suffering was not a curse. It was my training.
So you're saying depression made you strong?
I am saying that iron must be burned before it can become steel. I was burned.
You famously said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. It's a poetic line. But the reality wasn't poetic. When you took office, the house didn't just crack, it shattered. 11 states left. They started their own country.
They did more than leave, Alex. They took up arms against their own flag. It breaks a man's heart to look at a map of his own country and see enemy territory where there used to be brothers.
Let's be real about the hatred you faced. We think politics is toxic today, but in 1860, half the country literally prayed for your death. The newspapers called you a tyrant. They called you a butcher. They even called you an ape. How do you wake up every morning and lead a group of people who hate you?
If I had read every hate letter sent to the White House, I wouldn't have had time to eat breakfast. I learned very quickly that you cannot lead by listening to the noise. I had one job. Just one. Save the Union. If I saved the Constitution but lost the South, I failed. If I freed the slaves but destroyed the government, I failed. The hatred didn't matter. The mission mattered.
But the cost of that mission was blood. 600,000 men died. That is more than all other American wars combined. Was there a specific night, a specific moment where the guilt almost broke you?
The first battle of Bull Run. We were arrogant. We thought the war would last 90 days. We thought it was a game. Then the telegrams started arriving at the War Department. Hundreds dead. Then thousands. Boys from Ohio, from New York. Boys who would never go home to their mothers.
Did you feel responsible?
Responsible? Alex, I signed the orders. I remember looking out the window of the White House towards Virginia. The sky was lit up by campfires of the enemy, and I looked at my hands, and I realized they were stained. Every drop of blood spilled was on my conscience. I walked the halls at night, unable to sleep, asking God if the Union was worth this price.
And what was the answer?
The answer was yes, because if the American experiment failed, if democracy proved it could not hold itself together, then kings and tyrants around the world would rejoice. We were fighting for the idea that people can rule themselves.
Quick pause. If you're enjoying this, hit subscribe. It helps us bring more history to life. Now, back to the president. Mr. President, let's talk about the decision that changed the world. The Emancipation Proclamation. You freed millions of people, but history is complicated. In the beginning, you wrote a letter saying your goal was not to free the slaves, but to save the Union. You said if you could save the Union without freeing any slave, you would do it. Did your mind change, or was that just politics?
My heart never changed, Alex. I have always believed that if slavery is not wrong, then nothing is wrong. I cannot remember when I did not think and feel. But I was not elected dictator. I was elected president. My oath was to the Constitution, and the Constitution, sadly, protected that institution.
And so you were trapped? Your personal morals versus your legal duty?
Exactly. I was a surgeon trying to save a dying patient. If I operated too early, the patient would die of shock. If I waited too long, the disease would kill him. I had to wait for the exact right moment.
Got it. And that moment was 1863, but it was a massive gamble. Many of your own generals hated the idea. Half the North hated the idea. They said, we signed up to fight for the flag, not for the Negro. Were you afraid the army would mutiny?
I was terrified. It was the roll of the dice. But I realized something fundamental. We could not win the war while fighting with one hand tied behind our back. The South was using slave labor to build their forts, to grow their food. To destroy the rebellion, I had to destroy its root. I had to break the chains.
It wasn't just strategy, though. It became spiritual.
It became the soul of the war. You see, Alex, in giving freedom to the slave, we assured freedom to the free. A man who holds a chain around another man's neck eventually finds the other end fastened around his own. We could not be a free nation while millions were in chains. It was cancer. I just cut it out.
Blades. When you signed that paper, did your hand shake?
My hand was numb from shaking thousands of hands at a reception that morning, but my spirit was steady. I told them, if my name ever goes into history, it will be for this act, and my whole soul is in it.
Mr. President, I want to bring you to the present day, 2025. We aren't shooting each other on battlefields anymore. But in many ways, the country feels just as broken. We have a red America and a blue America. People stop talking to their own families over who they voted for. Be honest with me. Does the atmosphere today feel like 1860 to you?
It feels dangerously close, Alex. In 1860, the South stopped listening to the North. The North stopped listening to the South. When words fail, weapons follow. You are fighting a cold civil war right now. You don't use bayonets, you use algorithms. You use words to destroy reputations instead of bodies. But the hatred is exactly the same.
That's a scary thought, but it's hard not to hate. When the other side stands for things that you think are evil, how can you just get along?
That is the trap. That is exactly what the devil wants. In my time, I debated Stephen Douglas. We disagreed on everything. But we stood on the same stage. We shook hands. Today, you live in bubbles. You have curated your life so you never hear an opinion you dislike. If you only listen to people who agree with you, you are not learning. You are joining a cult.
So what is the solution? How do we fix a country where half the people think the other half are traitors?
You must realize that your enemy is also your neighbor. When the war ended, people wanted me to hang the Confederate generals. They wanted revenge. They wanted to burn the South to ash. Do you know what I told them?
What?
I said, let 'em up easy. Because if you destroy your enemy completely, who will you build the country with afterwards? You have to live with these people. You need charity for all and malice toward none. It sounds soft, I know, but forgiveness is the hardest thing in the world. It takes more strength to shake a hand than to clench a fist.
But Mr. President, people today would call that weak. They'd say you are compromising with evil.
Then let them call me weak. I preserved the Union. A man who burns down his own house to kill a rat is not a hero. He is just homeless. Don't burn down your house, Alex.
Before we enter the most emotional chapter of his life, if you believe history helps us survive our darkest moments, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps this reach someone who needs it. Thank you. Mr. President, we talk about the Civil War as a national tragedy, but in 1862, right in the middle of the slaughter, a personal tragedy struck inside the White House. You lost your son, Willie. He was only 11 years old. History says he was your favorite, the one most like you.
Willie, yes. He was the light of my eyes. He was a gentle soul. Too gentle for this world, perhaps. To lose a child. It is against the order of nature. A father should not bury his son. It feels like the earth itself has opened up to swallow you.
I read that while he was dying upstairs, you had to host a state dinner downstairs. You had to shake hands and smile while your son was taking his last breaths. How? How does a human being do that?
You do it because you must. I remember standing in the reception line. The music was playing. People were laughing, drinking wine, and every time the door opened, I looked toward the stairs, terrified that the doctor would come down and shake his head. I felt like a ghost. My body was in the ballroom, but my spirit was upstairs, holding his hand.
After he died, people say you almost went mad. You sat by his coffin for days. You opened it repeatedly just to look at him. Did you ever think about resigning? Just walking away to grieve in peace?
I wanted to. I wanted to crawl into the grave with him. I questioned God. I asked why he would take an innocent boy and leave a tired old sinner like me. But then, the telegrams came. Yes, every day I received lists of the dead, soldiers. I am 18 years old. I am 20 years old. I realized that thousands of mothers across America were feeling the exact same pain I was feeling. They were weeping for their sons just as I wept for mine. My grief was not special, Alex. It was just one drop in an ocean of sorrow. I realized I could not quit. I had to end the war, so that no more fathers would have to stand by a small coffin.
So you used your pain to fuel the mission?
I learned that we cannot escape sorrow. We can only choose what to do with it. I decided that Willie's death would not be in vain. I would make sure the nation he was born into would be a better nation by the time I joined him.
Mr. President, we are coming to an end. April 14th, 1865. The war was effectively over. Robert E. Lee had surrendered. The Union was saved. That night, you decided to go to Ford's Theater to see a comedy. You had received hundreds of death threats. You knew people wanted to kill you. Why did you go? Why didn't you stay safe inside the White House?
Safe? Alex, a man can die in his bed just as easily as in a theater. I went because I was tired. Deeply in my bones, I was tired. Mary wanted to go. And truthfully, I just wanted to laugh. I hadn't laughed, truly laughed, in 4 years. I thought, the storm is over. Let me have one night of peace.
There is a story, a chilling one, that you knew was coming. They say you had a dream just a few days before you died.
I did. It was vivid. In the dream, I was walking through the White House. It was very quiet, but I could hear sobbing. I went into the East Room and saw a catafalque, a coffin, guarded by soldiers. I asked one of the soldiers, "Who is dead in the White House?" And he replied, "The president. He was killed by an assassin."
That is terrifying. Did it stop you from going out? That leads me to my final question. There are millions of people watching this right now. Many feel like you did, depressed, feeling like the world is falling apart around them. Look into that camera. Give them one final order.
No, I told my cabinet about it, and then I put it out of my mind. You cannot live your life looking over your shoulder. If it was my time, it was my time. I had finished my work. The slaves were free. The Union was whole. I am not a general anymore, so I cannot give orders. But I will offer you this truth. I was a failure at 30. I was broken at 40. But I kept walking. Life will break you. It breaks everyone. But afterward, many are strong at the broken places. Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. So make up your mind to keep going. Do not give up on your country. And more importantly, do not give up on yourself. Farewell, Alex.
What a conversation. That was the man who walked through hell so we could walk in freedom. But the story of America didn't start with Lincoln. Next week, we are going back to the very beginning, to the rebel, to the mastermind, Benjamin Franklin. Subscribe and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss what he has to say.